Husband's female coworker kept sending him flirty texts, so I befriended her to keep watch. Discovered she was actually an undercover corporate investigator. Turns out my husband had been selling company secrets to competitors for years, and she was gathering evidence. Now he's facing federal charges, and we're losing everything. I still remember the exact moment my world started unraveling, though I didn't know it at the time. It was a Tuesday evening, and Marcus had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. The screen lit up with a text notification from someone named Vanessa. "Can't stop thinking about today, you're so bad." My stomach dropped. We'd been married for 8 years. Together for 12, and I'd never had reason to doubt Marcus. He was a software engineer at TechVance Industries, worked long hours, brought home a good salary, and we had what I thought was a solid marriage. Sure, things had been a little distant lately, but I'd chalked that up to stress. He'd been traveling more for work, coming home exhausted, distracted. But this text? This was different. I heard the shower shut off and my heart raced. I quickly memorized the number before setting the phone back exactly where he'd left it. When Marcus emerged, toweling his hair, I studied his face for signs of guilt. Nothing. He kissed my forehead absently and grabbed his phone without even checking it. "What do you want for dinner?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Whatever you want, babe. I'm easy." Easy. The word echoed in my head as I watched him scroll through his phone, his expression neutral. Was he reading Vanessa's message right now? Deleting it? Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked his phone whenever I could, but he'd suddenly become protective of it, keeping it in his pocket, face down on tables, password protected with a new code I didn't know. The Marcus I knew had always been an open book. This secrecy confirmed my worst fears. The nights were the worst. I'd lie awake beside him, listening to him breathe, wondering if he was dreaming of her. I cataloged every late night, every business trip, every unexplained expense. That weekend trip to Chicago last month, had he been alone? The new cologne he'd started wearing, was it for her? I went through credit card statements with a fine-tooth comb, looking for hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores. But Marcus was careful. Everything looked legitimate. Business expenses properly documented. Nothing obviously suspicious, except the money. There was more of it than there should have been. I'd noticed over the past year that our accounts seemed healthier than they should, given our income. When I'd mentioned it to Marcus, he'd explained it away as bonuses, freelance consulting work, smart investments. I'd been happy to believe him, to enjoy the nicer dinners out, the upgraded car, the talk of finally taking that trip to Italy we'd always dreamed about. Now, I wondered what I'd been too naive or too trusting to see. I found Vanessa on LinkedIn. Vanessa Chen, senior business analyst at TechVance Industries. She was beautiful. Sleek black hair, sharp features, designer clothes in every photo. Her profile was impressive. MBA from Stanford, previous positions at top tech firms, specialized in corporate efficiency optimization. She looked like the kind of woman who got what she wanted. I became obsessed. I scrolled through her Instagram, private, but I could see her profile picture, her Twitter, mostly professional posts about tech industry trends, even found an old blog she'd written about corporate culture. I was looking for clues, for proof of an affair, for anything that would tell me what was happening in my marriage. Then I had an idea. If I couldn't monitor them at work, I'd get close to her outside of it. It started with a company picnic that spouses were invited to. I usually skipped these events. Mingling with Marcus's coworkers had never been my thing, but this time I insisted on going. Marcus seemed surprised but pleased. If he was having an affair, he certainly didn't act like it. I spotted Vanessa immediately. She was alone, nursing a glass of wine near the dessert table, watching the crowd with an almost analytical gaze. I took a breath and approached. "Hi, I'm Sarah, Marcus Hoffman's wife. I don't think we've met." She turned to me with a smile that seemed genuine. "Vanessa, nice to finally meet you. Marcus talks about you sometimes. All good things, I hope?" I tried to keep my voice light, friendly. "Of course," she gestured to the crowd. "These things are always a bit awkward, aren't they? I never quite know whether I'm supposed to be networking or relaxing." We fell into easy conversation. Vanessa was charming, funny, and surprisingly warm. She made self-deprecating jokes about being terrible at small talk despite it being part of her job. She asked about my work. I was a freelance graphic designer and seemed genuinely interested. By the end of the picnic, we'd exchanged numbers. "We should grab coffee sometime," Vanessa suggested. "It's nice to have friends outside the usual work circle." I agreed, my mind spinning. This was perfect. I'd befriend her, watch her interactions with Marcus, and figure out exactly what was going on. Our first coffee date was the following week. Vanessa suggested a trendy cafe downtown, and I arrived early, nerves jangling. But again, she was disarming. She talked about how hard it was to make friends as an adult, especially when you traveled for work as much as she did. She asked about my design work, my life, my interests. She was a good listener, asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually paying attention. "Can I ask you something?" I said, trying to sound casual. "How long have you been working with Marcus?" "Oh, about 6 months now. He's been great to work with. Really sharp, you know. Some of these tech guys are brilliant but can't communicate to save their lives. Marcus isn't like that." 6 months. The timeline made my chest tight. "Do you two work together a lot?" "Fair amount. Yeah. I've been consulting on some of the security protocols for the new product line. Marcus has been my main technical contact." She smiled. "You're lucky to have. He clearly adores you." The words should have comforted me, but they didn't. She was too smooth, too careful. Or maybe I was just paranoid. We started meeting regularly. Coffee once a week, then twice. She introduced me to her yoga studio, and I introduced her to my favorite vintage bookstore. On the surface, we were becoming genuine friends. Underneath, I was watching her like a hawk. I looked for signs. Did she mention Marcus too often? Not enough? Did she check her phone anxiously? Ask probing questions about our marriage? But Vanessa was normal. She talked about her aging parents in Seattle, her younger brother's wedding she was planning, her struggles with online dating. She showed me terrible matches from dating apps and laughed at herself for being too picky. She seemed lonely, actually, despite her polished exterior. One afternoon, we were at a farmer's market together when Vanessa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and excused herself. I watched her pace near a flower stall, her expression serious, professional. When she returned, she was all smiles again. Work stuff? I asked. Always is, she said lightly. Sometimes I think about just chucking it all and opening a bookstore, living the simple life. You don't seem like the bookstore type, I observed. She laughed. No? What type do I seem like? The type who's very good at their job, whatever that job actually is. Something flickered in her eyes. Wariness, maybe. But she smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. I thought about that moment later. How I'd almost pushed too hard, almost revealed my suspicions. I had to be more careful. If she and Marcus were having an affair, I couldn't let either of them know I was onto them. Meanwhile, Marcus's behavior grew more erratic. He had more late nights, more emergency meetings, more business trips. Twice, I caught him on the phone in his car in the driveway, speaking in low, urgent tones. When I confronted him about it, he said it was just work stress, a big project with demanding deadlines. Is Vanessa part of this project? I asked one night. He looked up from his laptop, surprised. Yeah, actually, she's been consulting on the security review. Why? Just curious. We've been hanging out and she mentioned working with you. Something flickered across his face. Alarm? Fear? But it was gone so quickly I couldn't be sure. That's great, he said carefully. She seems nice. She is, I agreed, watching him. Very nice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs and found Marcus's laptop still open on the kitchen table. He'd forgotten to close it, or maybe he'd assumed I was asleep. My hands shook as I moved the mouse. The screen lit up, showing an open browser with multiple tabs. One was his email. Another was a messaging app I didn't recognize. A third was a file transfer site. I knew I should walk away. This was a violation of privacy, of trust. But my marriage was already violated, already broken, wasn't it? I clicked on the messaging app. The conversation history made no sense. Coded language, references to packages and deliveries, mentions of amounts that seemed too large to be anything legitimate. My heart pounded. This wasn't an affair. Or if it was something else entirely. Something worse. I heard movement upstairs, Marcus stirring. I quickly closed the laptop and hurried back to bed, my mind racing. What was I looking at? What was Marcus involved in? 3 months into my friendship with Vanessa, everything changed. We were at her apartment, a sleek, minimalist space that looked more like a hotel than a home, drinking wine and watching a terrible reality show. I'd gotten comfortable around her, let my guard down somewhat. She was making me laugh with a story about a disastrous blind date when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted, became serious. I need to take this. Sorry. She stepped into her bedroom, but the apartment was small enough that I could hear her voice, low and professional. Yes, I have the documentation. The transfer records are solid. No, he doesn't suspect anything. I'll have the final report ready by Friday. My heart stopped. I strained to hear more, but she was speaking too quietly. When she emerged a few minutes later, her smile was back in place, but something in her eyes had changed. Everything okay? I asked. Just work stuff. You know how it is. She poured more wine. So, this guy actually showed up to the date in a suit covered in cat hair, but I couldn't focus on her story. That phone call had sounded wrong, official. And that phrase, he doesn't suspect anything, who was she talking about? I started paying closer attention. Little things I'd dismissed before suddenly seemed significant. Vanessa never talked about her actual work at TechVance, I realized. She talked about corporate culture, about office politics in general, but never about specific projects or colleagues besides Marcus. She claimed to work long hours, but was always available to meet. Her apartment had almost no personal items, no photos, no books, nothing that suggested someone actually lived there long term. And then there were the questions she asked me about Marcus. They'd seemed innocent at the time, friendly interest in my spouse. But now I replayed them in my mind with new suspicion. She'd asked about his work habits, his stress levels, his travel schedule. She'd asked if he seemed worried about anything, if he'd mentioned any problems at work. I'd told her everything, I realized with dawning horror. In my quest to spy on her, I'd handed her information about my husband on a silver platter. One night, I did something I'd never done before. I followed Marcus. He'd said he was going to a late meeting, would be home around 10. I waited 15 minutes after he left, then got in my car and drove to the TechVance building. His car was in the parking lot, but the building looked dark except for a few scattered windows. I sat there for an hour, watching. At 9:30, Marcus emerged, but he wasn't alone. He was with a man I didn't recognize, carrying boxes to Marcus's car. They looked around nervous, speaking in hushed tones, and something about the whole scene made my skin crawl. This wasn't a normal business meeting. When Marcus got home that night, I pretended to be asleep. He slipped into bed quietly, and I felt the tension radiating from his body. He didn't fall asleep for hours, neither did I. The next morning, I called Vanessa. Can we meet? Today? Sure. Everything okay? I need to talk to you about something. We met at a park, neutral territory. Vanessa was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench, her expression unreadable. I sat down beside her, my hands shaking. I need you to tell me the truth. Are you sleeping with my husband? She turned to me, and for a moment, I saw something in her face. Pity, maybe. No, Sarah, I'm not. Then what the hell is going on? Don't tell me nothing because I know something is wrong. The texts, the phone calls, the secrecy. I can't tell you everything, Vanessa interrupted, her voice soft but firm. Not yet, but I need you to trust me, and I need you to not say anything to Marcus. Can you do that? Trust you? I don't even know who you are. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the park. A group of kids played on the swings, their laughter echoing across the grass. Finally, she spoke. My name is Vanessa Chen, and I am a senior business analyst at TechVance. But that's not my only job. She turned to face me. I also work with an investigative firm that specializes in corporate fraud. TechVance hired us 6 months ago because they suspected someone was stealing proprietary information and selling it to competitors. I was brought in undercover to identify the leak. The world tilted. And Marcus? Marcus is the leak, Sarah. I'm sorry. I couldn't breathe. The kids' laughter sounded distorted. Too loud. No, that's not. Marcus wouldn't. He's been selling source code, product designs, client lists, everything he could access to at least 3 different competing firms. We've documented over 40 separate instances of data theft over the past 2 years. The evidence is ironclad. You're lying. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. The extra money Marcus had been bringing in, he'd said it was from freelance consulting, and I'd never questioned it. The new car he'd bought, the expensive watch, the trips that seemed excessive even for his position. How do you know it's him? Digital forensics, mostly. We tracked the data transfers to his accounts, but I needed to gather additional evidence. Witness his behavior patterns. Understand his methods. She paused. The texts you saw weren't flirty, Sarah. They were coded messages about data transfers. Thinking about today meant a successful handoff. That emoji was just for plausible deniability if anyone saw the messages. I thought I might throw up. And me? Our friendship? That part, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. That was me trying to understand the situation better, yes. I needed to know if you were involved, if you knew anything. But Sarah, you have to believe me. You're completely in the clear. You had no idea what he was doing. How do you know I'll believe that? Because you befriended me to keep tabs on a woman you thought was having an affair with your husband. That's not the behavior of someone who knows their spouse is committing corporate. She gave me a sad smile. Also, your financial records are. You haven't benefited from any of the money he's made from this. Told you about. When? My voice came out as a whisper. When is this all going to come out? Friday. The FBI is executing a warrant. They'll arrest him at work. She reached out like she might touch my hand, then thought better of it. I know this is devastating. I'm truly sorry. But Sarah, you need to protect yourself. Get a lawyer. Document your own finances separately from his. Don't tell him you know. It could be dangerous if he feels cornered, and it could compromise the investigation. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I trusted you. I know. And I know that makes this worse. For what it's worth, I do like you. These past months, I wasn't pretending about everything. You're a good person caught in a terrible situation. Don't. I said sharply. Don't pretend we're friends. You used me. I did, she acknowledged. And I'd do it again, because what your husband is doing is serious. He's not just hurting a company. He's potentially putting people's personal data at risk, compromising national security protocols. The software TechVance develops is used by hospitals, financial institutions, government agencies. What Marcus has done could have real consequences for real people. I walked away without another word. The next 3 days were surreal. I moved through my life like a ghost, pretending everything was normal. Marcus came home Wednesday night with flowers and suggested we go out for dinner on Saturday. Celebrate our anniversary early. I said yes, smiled, played the part of the loving wife. Inside, I was screaming. On Thursday morning, I sat across the kitchen table from the man I'd married, watching him eat cereal and scroll through his phone. He looked so ordinary, so normal. This was the man who'd held me when my father died, who'd stayed up all night helping me meet a crucial client deadline, who'd proposed on a beach in Mexico with a ring he'd saved for months to buy. This was also a criminal, a liar, someone who'd been living a double life for years. Sarah? Marcus looked up, concerned. You okay? You look pale. Just tired. I managed. Didn't sleep well. You should rest today. Take it easy. He stood, kissed the top of my head. I love you. I love you too, I said automatically, the words hollow in my mouth. I hired a lawyer Thursday morning. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd handled plenty of white-collar crime cases. She listened to my story without judgment, took notes, and laid out my options. First priority is separating your finances as much as possible, she said. Any joint accounts? Start moving money to accounts in your name only. Document everything. If he's made major purchases in the past few years, I need receipts, records, everything. And Sarah, I need you to really think about this. Have there been any moments where you might have unknowingly been complicit? Any forms you signed without reading? Any conversations where he might have used your name or credentials? I racked my brain and came up with nothing. Marcus had always handled most of our finances, but I'd never signed anything work-related for him. The lawyer nodded, satisfied. Good. You're likely going to be interviewed by the FBI. Be honest, be cooperative, and don't lie to protect him. Your best chance of coming out of this clean is complete transparency. That night, I lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him breathe. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, The FBI would come for him, and the life we'd built would shatter into a million pieces. Part of me wanted to wake him up, to scream at him, to demand answers, but I stayed silent, frozen, counting down the hours until dawn. Friday morning, Marcus kissed me goodbye like it was any other day. Love you, babe. I'll be home late again. Big presentation to the board. Love you too. I lied. I called in sick to a client meeting and spent the day frozen on the couch, staring at my phone. At 2:17 p.m., it rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Hoffman, this is Special Agent Rebecca Torres with the FBI. We've just arrested your husband on federal charges of corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and wire fraud. We need to speak with you. How soon can you come to our office? The interview lasted 4 hours. 2 agents, Torres and her partner, Agent Kim, walked me through everything. They showed me evidence. Screenshots of Marcus's communications with buyers, bank records showing deposits into accounts I didn't know existed, surveillance footage of him meeting with competitors. It was overwhelming and undeniable. They showed me photographs of Marcus at restaurants, airport terminals, hotel lobbies, always with different men, always exchanging briefcases or envelopes. They showed me bank statements with deposits of $10,000, $25,000, $50,000 funneled through offshore accounts and shell companies. The total amount Marcus had made from selling secrets was over $800,000. $800,000, and I'd never known. Did you know about any of this? Torres asked, not unkindly. No, I thought. My voice broke. I thought he was having an affair. I never imagined. They asked about Vanessa, and I told them about our friendship, how I'd deliberately gotten close to her. Agent Kim actually laughed. So you were spying on the spy who was spying on your husband. That's a new one. Is Vanessa even her real name? I asked. Yes, actually. Vanessa's one of the best corporate investigators in the business. She was on your husband's trail for 6 months. Her work is the reason we have such a solid case. When I finally got home that eve, the house felt alien. Marcus's things were everywhere. His jacket on the back of a chair, his coffee mug in the sink, his reading glasses on the nightstand. Evidence of a life that had been a complete lie. My phone buzzed. Vanessa, I know you probably hate me, but I want you to know I tried to make this as easy as possible for you. You didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. If you need anything, and I mean anything, please reach out. I deleted the message. The news broke over the weekend. Local software engineer arrested in massive corporate espionage case, screamed the headlines. Reporters camped outside our house. Our neighbors avoided eye contact. My clients started politely distancing themselves. The life we'd built together dissolved overnight. I stopped answering my phone. The calls were relentless. Journalists wanting comments. Marcus's family demanding I support him. Former friends suddenly remembering they'd always thought something was off about him. My mother called every hour, worried, offering to come stay with me. I told her I needed space, needed time to process. But how do you process the fact that your entire marriage was built on lies? Marcus's bail was set at $500,000. His parents posted it, and he came home Sunday night, haggard and desperate. He tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Sarah, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been committing federal crimes for years? That you've jeopardized our entire future? That you've made me look like either a fool or an accomplice? You have to understand. I did it for us. The money. I wanted to give you the life you deserved. Don't you dare put this on me. I was shaking with rage. I never asked for any of this. I would have been happy with what we had. You did this for yourself, for your ego, for greed. I'm going to fight this. My lawyer says, I don't care what your lawyer says. Mine says I should leave you. And that's exactly what I'm doing. His face crumpled. Sarah, no. Please. We can get through this. I made a mistake, but a mistake? Marcus, you made 40 mistakes. 40 separate times you chose to betray your company, betray their trust, break the law. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. That's a choice you made over and over again. I was under so much pressure. The quotas, the expectations. Everyone at that level does things to get ahead. No, I said coldly. No, they don't. Most people work hard and stay honest. You chose to be a criminal. Don't pretend you had no choice. I moved into a hotel that night and filed for divorce on Monday. My lawyer was right. Distance was crucial. The FBI had assured me I wasn't under investigation, but association with Marcus was poison. I needed to protect myself, my business, my future. The divorce was messy. Marcus's assets, including many I hadn't known about, were frozen pending the criminal case. The house would likely be seized to pay restitution. His parents blamed me somehow for not standing by their son. His mother actually called me a fair-weather wife, as if federal crimes were just a rough patch we should weather together. My own parents were supportive but bewildered. They'd always liked Marcus, thought he was a good man, a good provider. How did we not see it? My father asked one night over dinner. How did none of us know? Because he was good at lying, I said simply. And we all wanted to believe. 3 months later, Marcus pleaded guilty as part of a deal with prosecutors. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $4.2 million in restitution. Everything we owned was gone. The house, the cars, the savings. I was left with my business, my personal debt, and the shattered remains of my life. The day of his sentencing, I attended the hearing. I don't know why. Maybe I needed closure, or maybe I just needed to see it through to the end. Marcus stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, looking small and defeated. When given the chance to speak, he turned to look at me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "Sarah, I'm so sorry for what I've put you through. You deserved so much better than this, than me." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The judge was less sympathetic. "Mr. Hoffman, your actions weren't just crimes against a corporation. They were violations of trust that affected countless individuals whose personal information was compromised. You had every advantage, every opportunity to succeed honestly, and you chose deception and greed. This court has no sympathy for such calculated betrayal." As they led Marcus away, he looked back one more time. I didn't look away. Didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I'd cried enough for this man, for the man I thought I wouldn't cry for the criminal he'd revealed himself to be. I ran into Vanessa one last by chance, at that same cafe where we'd had our first coffee. She was alone at a corner table, working on her laptop. She looked up as I walked past, and our eyes met. I could have kept walking. Should have, probably. But instead, I sat down across from her. "I don't forgive you," I said. "I'm not asking you to," she replied quietly, "but I understand why you did it, and thank you for making sure I was in the clear." She nodded. "How are you doing?" "Terrible. I'm broke. My reputation is in tatters, and I'm starting over from scratch at 34. But I'm free." I paused. "And I'm not married to a criminal, so there's that. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be okay. You're stronger than you think." "Yeah, well, I had to be." I stood to leave, then turned back. "Were we ever really friends? At all?" Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "I'd like to think we could have been, in another life, under different circumstances. But no, Sarah, it was always part of the job." "That's what I thought." I paused at the door. "Do you ever feel bad about it? About using people the way you do?" She looked down at her coffee. "Every single time. But I do it anyway because someone has to. Because the alternative is letting people like Marcus get away with it. That doesn't make it hurt less. I know. And I am sorry for that part, truly." I left and didn't look back. A year later, I'm rebuilding. I have a new apartment. Small, but it's mine. My business is recovering. Some clients came back once they realized I truly had no knowledge of Marcus's crimes. I'm in therapy, working through the betrayal, the trauma, the complicated grief of losing a marriage to criminality rather than infidelity. I've learned things about myself I never wanted to know. I've learned that I can be more resilient than I imagined, that I can start over when everything falls apart, that I can survive betrayal that should have destroyed me. I've also learned that I'm not as good at trusting people as I used to be. Maybe I never will be again. My therapist says that's okay, that being cautious isn't the same as being broken. She says I'm processing trauma, not failing at recovery. Some days I believe her. Other days I wonder if I'll ever feel whole again. I've started dating, tentatively. Nothing serious, just coffee with nice men who have no idea about my past. I haven't told any of them yet about Marcus, about the scandal, about being married to a federal criminal. I will, eventually. But for now, I'm just enjoying being Sarah again. Not Marcus's wife, not a victim, not a cautionary tale. Just me. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never seen that text, never befriended Vanessa, never started down this path. Would Marcus still be out there stealing secrets? Would I still be living in blissful ignorance? Would our marriage have continued, built on a foundation of lies I never questioned? But mostly I'm grateful I found out, even though it destroyed everything. Because the life I was living was a lie, built on crimes and deception. This new life, uncertain, difficult, scary as it is, at least it's real. At least when I look in the mirror now, I see someone who chose truth over comfort, who walked away rather than be complicit in lies, who rebuilt herself from nothing. The other day, I got an email from a woman I'd never heard of. She'd read about my case and wanted to reach out. Her husband had also been caught in a corporate fraud scheme, and she was struggling with the same questions, the same shame, the same sense of having been completely fooled by the person she loved most. I wrote back. I told her what my therapist told me, that loving someone doesn't make you responsible for their crimes, that trust isn't stupidity, that rebuilding is possible, even when it feels impossible. I told her she would survive this, and in telling her, I realized I finally believed it about myself, and in the end, that has to be enough.